Hello everybody, I'm Johnny Macabre, the creep of the class, and I'm here at Horror News Net TV. So yesterday, news broke that Robert Englund, probably the greatest horror icon currently alive, basically he had said in an interview, he tried to clear up some ambiguity at the ending of Freddy vs. Jason. You know, that some people have said, gone back and forth, whether who won, because it was left a little bit open to interpretation, because it ended with, Jason coming out of the lake, holding Freddy's head, but Freddy's head winks and laughs. So it implies that, they're both still alive. Robert Englund, however, came out in this interview and basically said Freddy died at the end of Freddy vs. Jason. Jason was the superior slasher. Okay, so I have a couple issues with that. I mean, first off, respectfully, Mr. Englund, I mean, you are the legend. You are Freddy Krueger. There's no two ways about it. Kidding. But however, I'm not sure you're familiar with all of the appearances your character has made, sir. You're selling yourself quite short. For one thing, going into Freddy versus Jason, Freddy was winning. Not only did he completely destroy Jason in the dream world, as you would expect, but he was actually winning in the waking world as well. He had disarmed Jason and was literally chopping him to pieces with his own machete. Jason was crawling away, trying to save himself from the onslaught. The only thing that stopped Freddy from destroying Jason in the waking world was the dock being set on fire and distracting him, allowing Jason to get back into the fight. Um, so that's one thing to take into consideration. I definitely would not call Jason the superior slasher, considering Freddy was winning. Now, as far as Freddy being dead, well, that's not how it happened. That's not the end of the story. You know, they were going to make a sequel to Freddy vs. Jason. They had already written the script. And when the studio X'd it, well, they just took that script and they made it into a comic book. Freddy vs. Jason versus Ash is a 6-issue miniseries from Wildstorm and Dynamite. Wildstorm being a subsidiary of DC Comics. They own the comic book rights to Jason and Freddy. And Dynamite, in my opinion, my favorite independent comic publisher right now. They own the rights to Ash. In fact, Army of Darkness comics have basically been their bread and butter. It's how they got going as a company. And yeah, I mean, this is a direct follow-up to Freddy versus Jason. We see the Necronomicon brought into the mix, where we had been introduced to it in the Friday the 13th mythos when we saw it on the table in the Voorhees home and Jason Goes to Hell. Basically, what happened is we find out that Jason is really almost like a super deadite. He did die in that lake. His mother brought him back using the Necronomicon. For some reason, she thought it failed. She went on. That's why she went nuts and started killing counselors herself. But he was just lurking in the woods. He was never alive in 2, 3, and 4. He was a deadite the entire time. Think about it. What living person takes a machete through the chest cavity and an axe in the head and lives? No one that I know of. And what ended up killing Jason in part 4? Dismemberment. What kills deadites? And what was it that brought him back in part 6? Was it the same thing that brought back Evil Ash in Army of Darkness, Lightning? Yeah. Super deadite. And we also find out that the Dream Demons, the beings that gave Freddy his powers, we found out about them in, Freddy's Dead, the final nightmare, they are also from the Necronomicon. So it's all tied together here. And so basically, an Ash comes into the mix. And what we end up seeing here, we end up seeing Freddy using the Necronomicon. He gains his dream powers in the waking world and essentially becomes like a god. So we see this 3-way brawl between Freddy, Jason, and Ash, and it's just incredible. It ends up with Freddy sucked into the Deadite dimension through a vortex, and Jason at the bottom of Camp Crystal Lake underneath the frozen lake. Yes, this happened in the winter. See, for comic book readers, Friday the 13th during the winter is not a novel concept where people keep clamoring for that in the movies. We've already seen it a couple times. Oh, but that wasn't the end of it either. After Freddy versus Jason versus Ash, we got the piece de resistance. Freddy versus Jason versus Ash, the Nightmare Warriors. This is a slasher fan's wet dream. This ties everything up. This finishes the original storylines of Freddy and Jason before we ever before we start seeing everything get remade with constant remakes and reboots. So I mean, we're never going to see sequels to the original storyline. Jason Goes to Hell and Jason X. I mean, those are never going to get sequels of their own. Freddy's Dead is never going to get its own movie sequel. This is the end all be all of those series. This sees Freddy use an army of Deadites to invade Washington, D.C., basically using Jason as his, revitalized Jason as his general. He actually repairs Jason's body because Jason at this point had just been falling apart at the seams. So now he's stronger and he's smarter. That's not something we've seen a lot of. We had never seen really a smart Jason before. He's intelligent now. So yeah, we have Freddy with still having his dream powers in the waking world, leading an army of Deadites against Washington, D.C. Ash is a part of the Nightmare Warriors. Who are the Nightmare Warriors? The Nightmare Warriors are none other than every single survivor from every single Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street movie. We have, what's-her-face, the telekinetic girl from Friday the 13th, part 7. We have the Dream Master and her son from the Friday, who's now grown up, by the way, from the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. We have Freddy's daughter. We have Tommy fucking Jarvis finally back in the mix. And, we have Ash at the head of this. And they're out there to finally bring down Freddy and Jason once and for all, to finally stop these monsters that have ruined their lives. And this comic is amazing. It brings every part of the mythos into play. Freddy's mother, from a Voorhees was he born, from a Voorhees will he die. Everything is referenced. If you can think of one trope, one plot thread that was brought up in either of the series, either Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street, it comes into play in Freddy versus Jason versus Ash, the Nightmare Warriors. And we end up with Freddy dead. Basically, the dream demons gave him that power to be their avatar in the dream world. He forsook that job to use that power that they gave him in the waking world. That pisses them off. At the end of the book, the team is able to unleash the dream demons upon Freddy, and they strip him of the power that they gave him. And Ash shoots him in the face with the boomstick, sending his corpse off into the Deadite dimension. He is flat out dead. He is stripped of his powers, and his face is just blown off. Jason, we finally get to see the climactic fight between Tommy Jarvis and Jason Voorhees, and Tommy comes up on top, beheading Jason Voorhees. That is the end. This comic ties up everything, and it is fantastic. I mean, this is the only medium they could ever do this story justice, because I will tell you what, if they tried making this into a movie, it would need a budget of one of the Avengers movies. It is just a fantastic story, and even if you are not a horror comic fan, if you just love Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street or Army of Darkness, treat yourself. Go get these 2 series and check them out. They're astonishing. As far as Robert Englund saying that Freddy died at the end of Freddy vs. Jason, it's just not so. It's just not so. He went on to have 2 more fantastic battles. He took on the freaking military of the United States of America, and he nearly conquered the entire country. And he definitely he went out a lot in a much more interesting way than simply being killed off screen by Jason, just coming out of the lake with a severed head. I mean, think about it. When we saw Freddy and Jason last in Freddy versus Jason, we had just seen Jason. He'd taken a beating. He had already been thrown out into the lake there. He came out and basically just impaled Freddy with his own arm, and they both fell into the lake. That was it. We never saw any sort of climactic finish. We never saw an actual beheading or anything like that. We just saw Jason come out of the lake afterwards. If that was the end of it, that would be a ripoff. Thankfully, that's not the end of it. So, Mr. England, don't do yourself that disservice. Your character went on to do quite a little bit more than the ending we saw in Freddy vs. Jason. So, once again, I'm Johnny McCobb. I'm the creep with the class, and I'm here at Horror News Net TV. I'll see you all next time. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.